In modern T20 cricket, there's this really brutal, it's an unforgiving statistic. If your team loses 3 wickets inside the 6-over power play, your win probability plummets. I mean, it goes down to less than 15%.
Yeah, you are statistically just dead in the water at that point.
Right. So for those listening, I want you to imagine hitting that 15% cliff in a World Cup semifinal in front of a highly expectant home crowd and against the exact same team that has eliminated you in the semifinals of the last 2 consecutive World Cups.
It's massive. The win probability in that specific, highly pressurized scenario doesn't just drop. It practically flatlines to zero.
Exactly. So today, we are taking a deep dive into that 15%.
Because it is the ultimate test of sporting psychology, really. We are examining England's 40-run victory over South Africa in the T20 Women's World Cup semifinal.
And, on paper, the scorecard reads like a pretty comfortable win. I mean, England sets a commanding target of 169 for 5.
Right, and then they restrict South Africa to 129 for 8, which secures their spot in the final against Australia at Lord's.
Yeah.
But a scorecard is, well, it's just an autopsy report. It tells you what happened, but it completely fails to capture the sheer tactical violence and the psychological warfare that dictated the first 10 overs of that match.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you have been following England's trajectory, you know this wasn't just a regular cricket match. This was, honestly, a real-time study in cognitive behavioral therapy on a 22-yard pitch.
That's a great way to put it.
We are looking at a team that was forced to stare down their absolute worst-case scenario right out of the gate. And rather than collapsing under the historical weight of it, they systematically dismantled the trap set for them.
Precisely. To understand the anatomy of this recovery, you have to really understand the depth of the initial freefall.
Which was steep.
Incredibly steep. This wasn't a gradual loss of momentum. By the end of the power play, England was sitting at a devastating 23 for 3. Yeah, that tied their worst power play performance of the entire tournament. And the architects of this gridlock were South Africa's opening bowlers, Shabnam Ismail and Merazan Kapp.
Right, they were relentless.
They didn't just bowl well, they completely suffocated the crease.
I want to dig into the mechanics of that suffocation because Kapp's opening spell was borderline unplayable.
It really was.
I mean, she gave up a single boundary in her entire spell, finished with 1 for 16 off for 4 overs, while Ismail took 2 for 31.
Unbelievable figures for a semifinal.
Truly. But looking at the footage, it wasn't just about raw pace, was it? It looked like England's batters were completely paralyzed in their footwork.
They're frozen.
Right. So I have a hypothesis here. Was Kapp actually doing something unplayable with the seam? Or did England's historical ghosts, those 2022 and 2023 World Cup semifinal losses to South Africa, create a cognitive overload that just froze their physical reactions?
It is a phenomenal question, and the answer is a devastating combination of both.
Okay, how so?
Well, Merazan Kapp was hitting this very specific back-of-a-length area that forces a batter to make a split-second decision. Do I commit forward or do I rock back?
Right, the hardest length to face.
Exactly. And when you were carrying the mental baggage of past semi-final failures, your brain just takes a fraction of a second longer to process that decision.
That hesitation is fatal.
Fatal against world-class pace. You saw it perfectly in Danny Wyatt-Hodges' dismissal.
Oh, man, yeah. The tournament's leading run scorer. She was the anchor, the player in absolute peak form, and she only managed 12 runs.
Because Kapp exploited that exact hesitation we were just talking about. Kapp bowled this magnificent delivery that jagged back off the seam.
A total beauty.
Wyatt-Hodge was caught in no man's land. She offered this really hesitant half-forward prod. The ball beat the inside edge, and her off stump just went cartwheeling.
It's like a brutal visual.
It is, and that isn't just a wicket. That is South Africa explicitly exploiting the psychological tension of the moment. The leading run scorer is sent packing, and the trap is fully sprung.
Yeah, and we can't talk about that trap without looking at Ismail's historic strike right before that.
Oh, absolutely.
Second over of the match. She drops a short ball to England opener Amy Jones. Now, Jones had been struggling heavily, right?
Yeah, she had a brilliant half-century against Sri Lanka at the start of the tournament. But since then,
yeah, in her 5 innings, she had scraped together just 36 runs, high score of 17.
her confidence was completely shot.
Exactly. So Ismail bowls short. The ball rears up aggressively outside off stump. Jones leans back to cut. But because she's lacking that confidence, she doesn't get over the top of the bounce.
Right.
She blasts the leading edge straight to Annery Dirksen at cover point.
And with that catch, Shabnam Ismail becomes the first female player in history to take 50 wickets at the T20 Women's World Cup.
Just an incredible milestone.
It is a monumental achievement for Ismail, and it instantly ratcheted up the claustrophobia for England. I mean, you could literally see the panic setting in on the field.
You really could. It's like walking into the most important pitch of your career, and within 2 minutes, your laptop dies, your main presenter freezes, and you just drop your notes on the floor.
That's a perfect analogy. The cognitive overload was massive.
And we saw that overload most glaringly with Alice Capsey's dismissal.
Without a doubt.
Ismail nails Capsey on the pad, plumb in front. The umpire raises the finger for an LBW. Now, in a high-stakes semifinal, your first instinct is usually to consult your partner and use the DRS to review the decision, right?
Always. You always check.
But Capsey just turns and walks, and replays later showed she actually had a slight inside edge onto the pad.
Yeah, if she reviews it, she survives.
It's crazy. Why wouldn't she review that?
That is the ultimate symptom of pressure. When an express pace bowler like Ismail is charging in, the crowd is tense, wickets are tumbling, the peripheral vision just narrows.
It's pure tunnel vision.
Exactly. Capsey felt she was beaten for pace, saw the finger go up, and the internal narrative of, oh no, we're collapsing again, overrode her tactical awareness.
She didn't even trust her own bat.
She didn't. South Africa had successfully engineered an environment of total panic.
Which makes the subsequent recovery so completely staggering to me.
Staggering is the word.
Being 23 for 3 doesn't just mean you're losing. It means the geometry of your entire innings is completely broken. The top order is decimated.
So the middle order veterans, Nat Sciver-Brunt and Captain Heather Knight, are suddenly forced to the crease with opposing mandates.
Right. They have to score quickly enough to build a descendable total, but they absolutely cannot afford to lose another wicket, or the innings is over before the 10th over.
It fundamentally forces a change in the tempo of the game. They had to engineer a rescue mission while essentially defusing a bomb.
And they did. What they produced was a 133-run partnership off just 90 balls.
Incredible stats.
It stands as the highest partnership for any wicket in a women's T20 World Cup semifinal, and the second highest in this entire tournament.
It really saved the match.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because I am looking at this 133-run partnership, and I have a hard time believing South Africa simply lost their edge.
Right.
Did Ismail and Cap suddenly bowl poorly after the power play? Or did Sciver-Brunt and Knight do something mechanically and tactically brilliant to neutralize the threat?
It's the latter, definitely.
It seems to me that they actively shifted their positioning to force South Africa to bowl to different areas. Am I reading that right?
What's fascinating here is that your read is spot on. South Africa did not let up. England executed a flawless tactical pivot.
How did they do it?
Well, when bowlers like Cap and Ismail are dominating the line and length, you cannot stand statically in your crease and hope they make a mistake.
Because they won't.
Exactly. Sciver-Brunt and Knight started manipulating their depth in the crease. By stepping out or retreating deep, they artificially altered the length of the deliveries.
Forcing the South African bowlers to adjust their release points.
Yeah.
So they are basically scrambling the bowler's radar.
Exactly that. And to understand the sheer audacity of this tactical pivot, we really have to contextualize the immense pressure Nat Sciver-Brunt was operating under.
Because she had just come back from an injury.
Right. She wasn't just walking into a crisis. She was walking into a crisis with a huge target on her back. She had missed the last 3 games with a recurring calf injury.
And to bring her back for a semifinal, the selectors made a truly brutal call. They dropped Sophia Dunkley.
Yeah, which was highly controversial.
I mean, Dunkley's form wasn't just decent. She was seeing the ball like a beach ball. Her scores leading into this match were 57, 14, and 49 not out.
She was on fire.
You are benching a highly informed player for a veteran who hasn't seen live match bowling in over a week and who has a compromised calf muscle.
It's a huge risk.
If Sciver-Brunt fails, the entire coaching staff gets crucified by the media for that selection gamble.
Totally. The mental fortitude required to walk out there at 23 for 3, knowing you took the spot of an informed player, knowing your calf might ping at any moment.
And knowing your team is in free fall.
Yes. It requires a level of compartmentalization most athletes never achieve. But Sciver-Brunt didn't just survive. She dominated.
She really did.
She physically tested that calf immediately, sprinted aggressively between the wickets to turn ones into twos.
Which subtly disrupts the fielding team's rhythm, doesn't it?
Completely throws them off.
And once she knew the calf would hold, the stroke play was just outrageous. She smashed 75 off 47 balls, picking off 11 fours with clinical precision.
It was a masterclass.
There was one sequence that perfectly illustrated this tactical dominance. She executed this incredibly delicate, premeditated scoop shot off Nadine de Klerk, using the bowler's own pace to clear the infield.
Beautiful shot.
And then, the very next ball, as the bowler adjusted, she rocked back and delivered a booming punch wide of deep mid-wicket to bring up her half-century.
Showcasing all her tools.
And she threw in a monstrous 6 into the stands, just to firmly announce the momentum shift.
While Sciver-Brunt was manipulating the pace, Heather Knight was neutralizing the spin.
Right. Knight played the perfect complementary role, scoring 58 off 47.
Her mechanical adjustments against the slower bowlers were textbook. She actively advanced down the pitch to a fuller ball from Nomkulileko Mlaba, smothering the spin and clearing cover.
She looked so comfortable out there.
Later, she brought up her own 50 with a magnificent slog sweep for 6 off Ayabonga Kaka.
That is a tough shot to execute under pressure.
It requires total commitment and perfect weight transfer.
And by the time they were done, they had effectively batted South Africa right out of their dominant position.
They really had.
Even though the stand ended suddenly, Mlaba came back and made a brilliant double breakthrough, dismissing both Knight and Sciver-Brunt in the space of 3 deliveries. The irreversible damage to South Africa had been done.
Oh, completely. England had dragged themselves from the abyss of 23 for 3 to set a massive target of a 169 for 5.
Which fundamentally altered the match geometry for the second half of the game.
Exactly. When a team posts a 169 in a high-stakes T20 match, it creates a very specific kind of physical pressure on the chasing team.
So what does this all mean? Well, think of South Africa's run chase like a highly pressurized pipe. In T20 cricket, you aren't just playing the bowler, you are playing the required run rate.
That's the real opponent.
Because England set the bar so high, South Africa's required run rate climbed to 9 runs per over by the very end of their power play.
And 9 and over is a steep climb.
Right. When you need 9 and over, the pressure in that pipe builds exponentially. The batters can no longer wait for bad deliveries. They are forced to manufacture boundaries out of good deliveries.
And this high-risk requirement is exactly what brings the fielding unit into play.
Yes, because good fielding is like fixing a leaky bucket. You can pour all the runs you want into it, but if your defense drops catches, you lose everything. England's fielding wasn't just about catching the ball, it was about strategically closing the release valves so that the pressure would force a South African mistake.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your pressurized pipe analogy perfectly explains the downfall of Laura Wolvaert.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, Wolvaert is a world-class batter, but she had been struggling slightly in this tournament. England knew she needed early boundaries to settle her nerves.
So what do?
They systematically starved her of the strike. In the first 3 overs, through incredibly tight infield placements and aggressive bowling, Wolvaert faced just 4 balls and scored 2 runs.
Wow. By the time she finally got the strike, the required run rate was just screaming at her.
Exactly. She eventually reached 13, but it was at a run-a-ball pace, which is fatal when the team needs 9 and over.
She was basically forced to try and burst that pressurized pipe open.
Right. She moved aggressively down the track, trying to muscle the bowler, Lindsay Smith, over mid-on.
But she didn't quite get the elevation.
No, she didn't. And that is when Sophie Ecclestone produced a moment of absolute biomechanical brilliance.
Oh my goodness, that catch was unreal.
It was spectacular.
Ecclestone is exceptionally tall, and she used every millimeter of it. She is running backwards, tracking a ball dropping over her shoulder. She leaps, contorts her back, extends fully, and takes this incredibly sharp overhead catch while completely off balance.
To end South Africa's opening stand at 43.
It was amazing.
It requires immense core strength and elite spatial awareness to track a ball over your shoulder without decelerating.
And Ecclestone wasn't an isolated incident.
No. Later on, she took another highly complex catch. Running backward from short fine leg, she judged a swirling top edge perfectly to dismiss Soon Lupus.
And it wasn't just the catches either. Danny Wyatt-Hodge, who we mentioned was dismissed for just 12 runs earlier, completely redeemed herself in the field.
She definitely did.
In the penultimate over, the pressure was at its absolute peak. Sanela Jafta tapped the ball toward backward point and took off for a desperate single.
A very risky run.
Very risky. Wyatt-Hodge swooped in, gathered the ball one-handed, and executed a laser-guided direct hit to run Jafta out. That level of fielding is a direct reflection of a team's collective psychology, isn't it?
It is the ultimate barometer. When a team is haunted by those historical ghosts we talked about, when they are doubting themselves, fielding is the first discipline that deteriorates.
That makes sense.
Hands get hard, footwork gets heavy, and communication between fielders breaks down. We saw this earlier in 2024. England had a disastrous campaign where their fielding was heavily criticized as sloppy and reactive.
Right.
But in this semifinal, holding on to tough, high-stakes catches, executing direct hits, it proves that England didn't just survive the 23-for-3 start. They actively conquered their previous demons.
Yeah. Even Tasman Brits, who played a genuinely valiant innings for South Africa, fighting her way to a gritty 51, was eventually suffocated by the required run rate.
She was fighting a losing battle.
She really was. She was forced into a false shot and caught off a relatively easy opportunity, fittingly combined by the veterans, Knight taking the catch off Sciver-Brunt's bowling.
We must maintain objectivity, though.
Of course.
It wasn't a completely flawless fielding display. The pressure still creates micro cracks. Charlie Dean missed a very difficult chance off Annery Dirksen.
Oh, right, the one at mid-off.
Yeah, Dean was backpedaling rapidly, sprang into the air with her left arm outstretched, and got a hand to it, but the ball burst through.
It would have been an all-time great catch if she held it.
It really would have. But it did go down, showing that even in a dominant display, the margins are incredibly thin.
True, but zooming out, the defensive unit was an absolute vice grip. They restricted South Africa to just 129 for 8, sealing that 40-run victory and booking their ticket to Lord's.
A monumental turnaround.
So let's distill the sheer scale of this turnaround. England is thrown into the deepest end of the pool. They are 23 for 3 against a historic rival, facing elite pace bowling, with the weight of consecutive semifinal failures dragging them down. The cognitive overload is massive.
But rather than drowning in it,
Sciver-Brunt and Knight shrink their timeline. They don't try to win the game in the 7th over. They just focus on mechanically manipulating the crease, ball by ball, to forge a 133-run partnership.
they alter the geometry of the game.
Yes. They crank up the required run rate, and then the fielding unit systematically closes every release valve until South Africa breaks.
It is a masterclass in tactical patience.
And for you listening, the insight here goes far beyond cricket. True resilience isn't about blindly ignoring a disaster or relying on generic positive thinking.
No, it's highly practical.
It is about microfocus. When your macro goal, whether that is winning a World Cup or saving a doomed corporate project, feels mathematically impossible, elite performers don't panic about the end result.
They shrink their timeline.
Exactly. They focus entirely on the mechanics of surviving the very next moment.
Yeah.
You change your stance, you take the single, you rebuild the foundation.
This raises an important question, though, as we look ahead to the final.
What's that?
We view that 23 for 3 start as a traumatic near collapse that England was fortunate to survive. But moving into a final against a powerhouse like Australia at Lord's, does suffering and systematically surviving that exact nightmare scenario actually make a team significantly more dangerous?
Because they've already faced the worst the universe can throw at them and won anyway.
Precisely. Is the psychological armor forged in that specific crucible exactly the secret weapon England needs?
That's a fascinating thought.
Australia is a formidable, relentless opponent. But England now knows, not theoretically but unequivocally, that their tactical foundation can withstand a total top-order collapse.
Wow, yeah.
When you have looked your statistical death in the eye and mechanically picked the lock to escape it, the fundamental fear of failure diminishes.
That is an incredible thought to leave on. The disaster didn't break them. It inoculated them.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love tearing apart the mechanics of these high-stakes narratives with you. Keep looking for the hidden architecture behind the headlines. Remember to shrink your timeline when the pressure hits, and we will catch you on the next one.